Some encounters shift your entire world in ways you never anticipate, leaving an imprint so vivid you can recall every sensation from that moment. This happened to me on an ordinary Wednesday when my supervisor requested a private meeting. I assumed it concerned a current assignment or perhaps feedback on recent work. However, the deliberate way she secured the door and the intensity in her expression as she gathered her thoughts indicated something far more significant was about to unfold. Before I share the details of our conversation, I'm curious about where you're joining me from today. Please share your location in the comments. It brings me joy to know how these narratives connect people across different places and communities. The morning had been particularly gloomy, with persistent drizzle, creating intricate patterns across the office windows. I was finishing my morning coffee when the phone chimed with an internal call. The screen displayed Victoria's extension, my department head. Our professional relationship spanned nearly 6 years, and though she maintained a reserved demeanor, her leadership had always been consistent and fair. "Sarah," her voice carried its usual authority but seemed unusually subdued. "Would you mind joining me in my office briefly?" A flutter of nervousness mixed with intrigue stirred in my chest. I surveyed the bustling workplace around me, colleagues, absorbed in their tasks, oblivious to the sudden attention I felt drawn to myself. I adjusted my jacket, rose from my chair, and walked through the corridor toward her office. Victoria's workspace had always commanded respect, not due to intimidation, but because every element reflected her meticulous nature. Professional certifications adorned the walls alongside thoughtfully selected artwork. The atmosphere carried subtle notes of sandalwood and jasmine, creating an ambiance that felt both professional and distinctly personal. She motioned for me to enter, then deliberately closed the door behind me. The sound of the latch engaging seemed to echo with unusual prominence. "Please, take a seat," she said, her tone gentler than typical. I settled into the chair facing her desk, the leather cushioning adjusting to my weight. My hands found their place on my lap, though I noticed a slight tremor in my fingers. She reclined in her chair, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Not the analytical gaze I'd grown accustomed to, but something more contemplative and searching. "I've found myself reflecting on your contributions lately," she began. Her words caught me off guard. Personal observations from her were rare and typically connected to specific projects or performance reviews. I tilted my head slightly, uncertain of her direction. She leaned forward, placing her forearms on the desk with her fingers interlaced. "Your tenure here spans many years, and I've observed not just your professional capabilities, but your character. You maintain remarkable poise during challenging periods, and I'm aware that circumstances haven't always been straightforward for you." Her acknowledgement struck something deep within me. I reflected on recent years, the private challenges I rarely discussed, evenings when exhaustion felt overwhelming, mornings when maintaining optimism required considerable effort. How perceptive had she been throughout this time? The gentle percussion of rain against the windows created a steady backdrop. I could detect the soft hum of the ventilation system and catch traces of her signature cedar fragrance lingering in the air. "Victoria, I'm not sure how to respond," I said softly. Her smile emerged. Not the polite, professional expression I knew well, but something more genuine and warm. "No response is necessary. I simply wanted to acknowledge that I recognize your efforts and value your dedication. Additionally, there's a matter I've been considering discussing with you, something that could significantly alter your trajectory here." My breath caught slightly. Alter my trajectory. Was she referring to advancement, a role change, or something entirely different? Her gaze remained steady and unwavering. "I hope you'll trust me when I say this extends beyond typical workplace matters. This is about recognizing your potential and ensuring you're positioned where you can truly flourish." A pause filled the space between us, charged with unspoken possibilities. I felt the significance of her words settling over me, curiosity, building alongside an unfamiliar warmth in my core. I had entered expecting a routine professional discussion. Instead, I found myself drawn into something I couldn't yet define, leaning forward with growing interest. Then she continued quietly, "However, before I elaborate further, I need to ask you something important." I remained silent, processing her words. My heartbeat seemed more pronounced in the quiet office. I couldn't determine whether this was anxiety or the beginning of something I didn't yet comprehend. Looking at her expectant expression, the office environment seemed to transform. No longer did it feel like a space dominated by schedules and reports. It had become the setting for something more personal, something that might remain with me long after this rainy Wednesday concluded. Her unspoken question lingered in the atmosphere, weighted with implications. She observed me carefully, as if evaluating my readiness to receive what she was about to share. When she finally spoke, her voice was measured and deliberate. "Sarah, if you had the opportunity to embark on something entirely different, something that might challenge everything you've become comfortable with in this environment, would you be willing to consider it?" I blinked, uncertain how to process such an open-ended proposition. Though broadly stated, her manner of asking made it feel intimate and deeply personal. My grip tightened slightly on my lap, and I realized I was holding my breath. "I suppose that would depend," I replied, carefully, "on the specifics and your reasons for approaching me." Victoria settled back in her chair, the leather creaking softly. She crossed her arms loosely while maintaining eye contact. "I've been seeking someone I can trust implicitly. This isn't a position that can be advertised publicly. It requires more than technical skills. It demands understanding, confidentiality, and a particular kind of presence that cannot be developed through training alone." Her words seemed to dissolve the professional barriers we typically maintained within these walls. There was no mention of job requirements or corporate objectives, only this quiet, intentional dialogue that seemed to reach something more fundamental. "What exactly are you proposing?" I inquired. Rather than answering immediately, she stood and approached the window. Her palms rested lightly against the frame as she gazed down at the rain-soaked parking area below. The filtered light softened, her typically sharp features revealing an almost vulnerable quality. "This isn't about compensation or titles," she said eventually. "It involves collaborating with me in ways that transcend the conventional boundaries of this workplace. I need someone I can depend on, not just during meetings or project deadlines, but in situations where I cannot afford to involve anyone else." Her tone carried gravity, and I felt something stirring within me, a complex mixture of curiosity, flattery, and the slightest edge of apprehension. "Why have you chosen me?" I asked. She turned back toward me, her expression unreadable yet somehow warmer than I'd ever witnessed. "Because you truly listen. You perceive subtleties others miss. You don't become overwhelmed by surrounding chaos. And most importantly, I trust you. That quality is exceptional, Sarah." I wasn't certain how to process this revelation. Throughout my years here, I had never considered myself particularly distinguished in her perception. I had been dependable and competent, but trust, that represented something entirely different. Victoria returned to her desk, but rather than sitting, she placed one hand on the edge and leaned slightly toward me. "If you agree, there will be occasions when you won't have clear guidance or predetermined outcomes. You'll need to adapt as situations develop, trusting your instincts and trusting me." The way she emphasized that final point made the space between us feel electrically charged in a way that had nothing to do with the office climate. I glanced at the closed door behind me. The muffled sounds of the workplace seemed distant, as if we existed in an entirely separate realm. "Very well," I said slowly. "I'm willing to listen, but I want complete transparency before making any commitments." A subtle smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Perfect. That's precisely the response I hoped for." She moved around the desk and sat again, positioning herself closer than before. "There are developments occurring within the company that only select individuals are aware of. These changes will fundamentally impact everyone who remains, and I want you alongside me when they unfold." Her words sent a ripple of anticipation through me. Part of me wanted to ask numerous questions immediately, but another part, the more composed, intuitive part, recognized this was merely the beginning of whatever revelation she was preparing to share. She checked the time briefly, then returned her attention to me. "Would you be available to visit my home this weekend? We'll have complete privacy there, and I can provide you with all the details." I hesitated only momentarily. "Yes, I can arrange that." Her smile deepened, though it carried an undertone of seriousness. Excellent. We'll discuss everything then. And Sarah, until that time, this conversation remains strictly confidential. Not a single word to anyone. I nodded, feeling the weight of her request. I stood, smoothing my jacket once more, and as I left her office, the hallway seemed somehow different, as if I was carrying something invisible yet substantial. I couldn't predict exactly what I was about to become involved in, but one thing was absolutely certain. By the time this journey concluded, nothing would remain quite the same. The remainder of that Wednesday passed in a haze. I remained at my workstation, focused on my computer screen, but my thoughts continuously returned to Victoria's voice, her unwavering gaze, the way she had said, "I want you alongside me when they unfold." I maintained my routine, responding to correspondence, participating in scheduled meetings, offering appropriate input, yet it felt as though I was functioning in two parallel realities. In one, I remained the reliable, long-term employee. In the other, I harbored a secret that no one around me could possibly imagine. By Saturday afternoon, the anticipation had evolved into something more substantial. I stood before my mirror, longer than usual, contemplating my attire. I wanted to avoid appearing overly formal. This wasn't a business meeting, but I also didn't want to seem careless. Ultimately, I selected a cream-colored blouse and navy trousers, something that felt authentic without appearing overly calculated. Victoria's residence was only 20 minutes away, yet it felt like entering a completely different environment. A curved driveway approached a two-story home featuring expansive windows that overlooked mature, swaying oak trees. The midweek rain had cleared, and the late afternoon sunlight bathed the front landscape in a golden glow. She opened the door before I completed my second knock. "Sarah," she greeted me with a smile that felt more like genuine welcome than mere acknowledgement. "Please come inside." The interior atmosphere was inviting, carrying subtle fragrances of vanilla and something savory emanating from the kitchen area. The space was sophisticated yet comfortable: plush carpeting, framed family photographs, a fireplace with gentle, dancing flames. "Make yourself at home," she said, indicating the living area. "I'll prepare some coffee for us." I chose a seat on the sofa, hands resting in my lap, absorbing the thoughtful details. Books organized by genre on the shelves, a delicate ceramic vase holding a single white orchid, the way the firelight created patterns on the polished hardwood floors. When she returned, she offered me a mug and sat beside me rather than across from me. The warmth of the coffee spread through my palms as she studied me for an extended moment. "I invited you here because I need to speak without constraints," she began. "I cannot do that within the office environment. Not yet." I nodded, waiting, attentively. "There's a significant reorganization occurring at the executive level," she said. "It will affect every aspect of operations: personnel decisions, departmental structure, role definitions. Most employees won't be informed until implementation is imminent, but I have advanced knowledge. Additionally, I have some influence over how these changes are executed." She took a measured sip of coffee, maintaining eye contact throughout. "I've been offered the opportunity to select someone to work directly with me throughout this transition. Someone who will not only assist me in managing the process, but whom I can trust with confidential information." I placed my mug on the small table between us. "And you're considering me for this role?" "I am," she replied simply. "Because I know you can maintain composure when situations become complex. Because I've observed you handle difficult circumstances with more grace than most people demonstrate." "This sounds like an extraordinary opportunity," I said quietly, though my voice carried uncertainty I couldn't conceal. Victoria nodded as if she had anticipated my hesitation. "It is, but it will also demand more from you than anything you've undertaken previously, and it's not merely the increased workload. It's the responsibility, the information you'll possess that others won't have access to." The firelight reflected in her eyes, and momentarily I felt as though I was looking into something deeper than our spoken exchange. She leaned forward slightly, resting her hands on her knees. "I need someone who won't hesitate when situations become complicated. Someone who can sit in a conference room where decisions are being made that will affect hundreds of people's livelihoods and still maintain clear judgment. Sarah, I know that person is you." Her confidence in my abilities stirred something I hadn't experienced in years. Throughout my tenure, I had approached my responsibilities quietly and efficiently, never expecting much beyond steady employment and occasional recognition. To have someone perceive me, not just my work output, but me as an individual, was unexpectedly moving. But why now? I asked. Why not someone with more years remaining in their career? Someone who might offer the company more long-term value? She shook her head firmly. Because experience isn't measured in remaining years. It's about what those years have taught you. I've watched you navigate challenges that most people wouldn't even recognize approaching. That's not something I can replace with enthusiasm or energy alone. I need sound judgment, and you possess it. The room seemed quieter now, the gentle hum of the heating system providing a soft backdrop to the weight of her words. I thought about all my years with the company, the small moments when I had chosen patience over frustration, the times I had noticed details others had overlooked. Perhaps she had been observing all along. I took a deep breath. If I agree to this, what would be my next steps? Her lips curved into a subtle smile. Next, you would begin attending private meetings with me, sessions no one else knows about. Currently, you would help me develop strategies, anticipate potential outcomes, and manage elements others don't even know exist. And Sarah, she hesitated, then continued with a more personal tone. You would have genuine input, not just presence in the room, but actual influence in shaping what emerges from all of this. I felt her words settling within me. Genuine input. After years of feeling like a component in the organizational machinery, the possibility of actually influencing outcomes, of being involved in decision-making rather than simply implementing decisions, was both exhilarating and daunting. I met her gaze, and for the first time since entering her office that Wednesday, I felt my uncertainty transform into clear, steady determination. All right, I said. I accept. Victoria's smile deepened, now warm and certain. She reached out, placing her hand lightly on mine for just a moment. A gesture that was brief but carried the weight of mutual commitment. You won't regret this decision, Sarah, and I won't forget that you said yes. We continued talking for a while longer, the conversation shifting to more specific details, but my mind kept returning to that moment of decision. By the time I left her home, the sky had deepened to rich purple, and the evening air felt crisp, against my face. Driving home, I experienced a unique combination of tranquility and excitement. I couldn't predict exactly what the coming weeks would bring, but I knew this much. I would no longer be the woman who quietly remained in her designated space. Victoria had revealed an opportunity I hadn't even known existed, and I had stepped forward to embrace it, eager to discover where this path would lead.